What kind of person sprays a service dog with bleach? The question hung in the air, sharp and bitter, as I sat in my wheelchair on the cracked sidewalk of Maple Grove Lane. My hands trembled, not from the cold September evening, but from the rage boiling inside me. My golden retriever, Scout, pressed his damp fur against my leg, his soft brown eyes searching mine for reassurance. He was still shaking, the faint chemical stench of bleach clinging to him. Across the street, Karen stood on her pristine lawn, her spray bottle dangling from one manicured hand, her lips curled in a smug sneer. She thought she'd won. She thought this was just another HOA power trip. She had no idea she'd just committed a federal crime. Maple Grove was supposed to be my fresh start. After the car accident that took my ability to walk 2 years ago, I'd moved here for peace, for a quiet suburban life with Scout, my lifeline. He wasn't just a pet. He was my legs, my calm in the storm, trained to sense my panic attacks and fetch my medication. But peace wasn't in the cards. Not with Karen Whitaker, the self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association, patrolling the neighborhood like a hawk. Her rules were law. No unapproved mailboxes, no weeds taller than an inch, no dogs barking after 8 p.m. Scout, with his impeccable training, never barked. But that didn't stop Karen from hating him. It started small. A passive-aggressive note taped to my door about pet dander, lowering property values. Then a fine for Scout's excessive shedding on my own front porch. I ignored it, thinking she'd tire herself out. I was wrong. That evening, as I wheeled myself back from the park, Scout trotting faithfully beside me, Karen was waiting. She stood in her driveway, arms crossed, her blonde bob gleaming under the streetlights. "Your dog's a nuisance," she snapped, her voice cutting through the quiet. "He's scaring my cats." I tried to explain. Scout was a service dog. He didn't chase cats. He barely noticed them. But Karen wasn't listening. She raised her spray bottle, filled with what I later learned was diluted bleach, and sprayed it directly at Scout. He yelped, a sound that ripped through my heart. I screamed, "What are you doing?" But she kept going, her eyes gleaming with vindictive triumph. "Teaching you both a lesson," she said, her voice dripping with venom. Scout shook himself, confused and scared, while I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, but no one came out. No one dared cross Karen. The police arrived within minutes, their sirens slicing through the tension. Officer Daniels, a broad-shouldered man with a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped out first. I was crying now, stroking Scout's wet fur, trying to calm him. Karen, unfazed, started her defense before anyone asked. "That dog's a menace. It's always sniffing around my yard," she lied, her voice climbing higher. Daniels raised a hand, silencing her. "Ma'am, did you spray this dog?" he asked, his tone calm but firm. Karen shrugged, as if it were nothing. "Just a little cleaner. It's not a big deal." I could barely speak, my throat tight with anger. "He's a service dog," I managed, my voice breaking. "He's protected under federal law." Daniel's eyes narrowed as he looked from me to Scout, then back to Karen. Her smug expression faltered, just for a second. She didn't know. How could she? Karen, who ruled Maple Grove with her clipboard and her fines, had never bothered to learn the laws she was breaking. The Americans with Disabilities Act made it clear, harming a service dog was a federal offense. As Daniels took her statement, I noticed Mrs. Larson, the elderly widow next door, watching from her porch. She'd always been kind, slipping Scout treats when Karen wasn't looking. Now, her hands were clasped tightly, her face pale. She caught my eye and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I didn't understand why she looked so guilty. Not yet. Karen's voice grew louder, more defensive. "I'm protecting my property," she insisted, waving her spray bottle like a scepter. Daniels wasn't impressed. He jotted notes, his pen moving steadily, while Scout whimpered softly at my side. I whispered to him, promising he'd be okay, but my heart was racing. This wasn't just about Scout. It was about every time Karen had bullied someone in this neighborhood, every fine, every threat, every power trip. I'd had enough. By the time Daniels finished, Karen's confidence was cracking. "You can't arrest me for this," she said, but her voice wavered. Daniels didn't respond. He turned to me, his expression softening. "We'll need to take Scout to a vet to make sure he's okay." and we'll need your statement. I nodded, stroking Scout's head. He was still trembling, but his warmth against my leg kept me grounded. As the police escorted Karen to their car for questioning, she shot me a glare that could have burned through steel. I met her eyes, refusing to look away. This wasn't over. The next morning, the air in Maple Grove felt different, like the neighborhood was holding its breath. Scout was at the vet, getting checked for chemical irritation, and I was alone in my small living room, replaying the incident in my head. My phone buzzed with messages from neighbors, some sympathetic, others cautious, as if taking my side might summon Karen's wrath. I wasn't surprised. Karen had ruled this place for years, her HOA meetings a stage for her to shame anyone who dared defy her. But I wasn't backing down, not after what she did to Scout. I called my lawyer, Sarah, a friend from college who specialized in disability rights. Her voice was steady, reassuring, as she laid out the facts. Karen's in deep trouble, she said. The ADA doesn't mess around with service dog violations. You've got a strong case, Ellie. I felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by dread. Taking on Karen meant taking on the entire HOA board, her loyal minions who nodded along to her every whim. Still, I couldn't let this go. Scout deserved justice. I deserved justice. Sarah suggested we gather evidence, witness statements, vet reports, anything to build the case. I started with Mrs. Larson. When I wheeled over to her house, she opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red-rimmed. Ellie, I should have said something sooner, she whispered, pulling me inside. Her living room smelled of lavender and old books, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. She sat across from me, twisting her hands. Karen's been after Scout for months. I saw her watching him, taking pictures. I think she was building a case to get him banned. My stomach twisted. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Larson looked away, ashamed. She threatened to fine me for my rose bushes. Said they were non-compliant. I was scared, Ellie. She's got everyone scared. That was the twist I hadn't seen coming. Karen's campaign against Scout wasn't a spur-of-the-moment tantrum. It was calculated, deliberate, a plan to drive us out. Mrs. Larson handed me a USB drive. I recorded her once, ranting about your dog at an HOA meeting. It's not much, but it's something. I thanked her, my mind racing. Karen wasn't just a bully. She was a predator, picking off anyone who didn't fit her vision of a perfect neighborhood. I spent the afternoon calling other neighbors, piecing together stories of her tyranny. Mr. Patel, who ran the corner store, told me she'd find him for unsightly window displays. The Garcias, a young couple, admitted she'd threatened to report their toddler's tricycle as a safety hazard. Everyone had a story, but no one had dared to fight back. Until now. By evening, Scout was back home, his fur clean but his spirit subdued. The vet said he'd be fine, but the memory of his yelp haunted me. I sat with him on the couch, the USB drive in my hand, Mrs. Larson's words echoing in my head. Karen thought she could control everyone, but she'd underestimated me. I wasn't just fighting for Scout. I was fighting for every neighbor she'd bullied, every person she'd made feel small. Sarah came over that night, her laptop open to a draft of our complaint. We're not just going for a fine, she said, her eyes fierce. We're pushing for criminal charges. Tampering with a service animal can carry jail time. I nodded, my resolve hardening. Karen had crossed a line, and I was ready to push back. But as we worked, a knock at the door startled me. It was Mr. Henderson, the HOA treasurer and Karen's right-hand man. His face was grim, his voice low. Ellie, you need to drop this. Karen's got friends in high places. You don't know what she's capable of. I stared at him, my heart pounding. Is that a threat? I asked. He shook his head, but his eyes said otherwise. Just a warning, he muttered before walking away. Sarah grabbed my hand, her grip steady. She's scared, she said. That's why she's sending her lackeys. We're getting to her. I wanted to believe her, but as I looked at Scout, curled up beside me, I felt a chill. Karen wasn't going to go down quietly. The HOA meeting was set for Friday, and the tension in Maple Grove was palpable. Word had spread about Karen's arrest. She'd been released on bail, but the neighborhood was buzzing. Some saw me as a hero. Others, Karen's loyalists, shot me dirty looks as I wheeled past. I didn't care. I was done hiding. Sarah and I had spent days preparing, armed with the USB drive, vet reports, and statements from neighbors brave enough to speak up. This wasn't just about Scout anymore. It was about dismantling Karen's reign of terror. The community center was packed, folding chairs squeaking under the weight of nervous anticipation. Karen sat at the front, her face a mask of composure, but her eyes betrayed her. They darted to me as I wheeled in, Scout at my side, his service vest gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I could feel the room splitting, those who wanted Karen gone and those too afraid to defy her. She opened the meeting with her usual flair, her voice syrupy sweet as she welcomed everyone. "We're here to discuss community standards," she said, her eyes locking onto mine, "and address certain disruptions." The jab was clear, but I didn't flinch. Sarah squeezed my shoulder, a silent reminder to stay calm. When it was my turn to speak, I took a deep breath and rolled to the front. Scout's steady presence gave me courage. "I'm not here to disrupt," I began, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. "I'm here because Karen Whitaker sprayed my service dog with bleach. Scout isn't just a pet, he's my lifeline. And what she did is a federal crime." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Karen's face flushed red, but she stayed silent. I played Mrs. Larson's recording, her voice trembling as she recounted Karen's threats against Scout. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, some looking at Karen with new eyes. Then came the twist. Mr. Patel stood up, his voice shaking but resolute. "Karen tried to bribe me," he said. "She offered to waive my fines if I testified that Ellie's dog attacked my store's cat." The room went silent, the air heavy with shock. Even I hadn't expected this. Patel continued, describing how Karen had cornered him, her promises laced with threats. "I couldn't stay quiet anymore," he said, sitting down to scattered applause. Karen leaped to her feet, her composure shattered. "That's a lie," she shouted, pointing at Patel. "He's just jealous of my leadership." But the crowd wasn't buying it. Mrs. Garcia stood next, her voice soft but firm. "She fined us for our daughter's tricycle, said it was an eyesore. We paid because we were scared." One by one, neighbors spoke up, their stories painting a picture of a woman who ruled through fear. Karen's allies tried to defend her, but their arguments were weak, drowned out by the growing chorus of dissent. Sarah leaned in, whispering, "We've got her." But Karen wasn't done. She slammed her hand on the table, her voice rising to a shriek. "You people don't appreciate what I do for this neighborhood. You'll regret this." It was a threat, raw and unfiltered, and it only fueled the crowd's anger. As the meeting ended, Karen stormed out, her heels clicking furiously. I felt a strange mix of triumph and unease. We'd exposed her, but she wasn't the type to back down. That night, as I locked my doors and checked on Scout, I found a note slipped under my door. In Karen's neat handwriting, it read, "You'll pay for this." My heart raced, but I crumpled the note. She could threaten all she wanted. I was ready for the fight. The days after the HOA meeting were a blur of legal preparations and whispered rumors. Karen's arrest had made local news, a small headline buried in the community section. HOA president faces charges over service dog incident. I avoided the comments section, knowing it would be a battleground of opinions. Sarah was relentless, filing motions and gathering more evidence. Scout was recovering, his spirit slowly returning, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen was planning something. Her note still burned in my mind. I started noticing things, strange cars parked near my house, anonymous complaints about my unkempt lawn, even though I'd hired a gardener to keep it pristine. Sarah suspected Karen was rallying her allies, trying to discredit me before the court date. "She's desperate," Sarah said, her voice calm but firm. "Bullies always lash out when they're cornered." I wanted to believe her, but the anxiety gnawed at me. Scout sensed it, pressing closer during my restless nights. Then came the second twist. Late one evening, Mrs. Larson called, her voice frantic. "Ellie, check your backyard camera." I'd installed security cameras after the bleach incident, a precaution Sarah insisted on. I pulled up the footage on my laptop, my heart pounding. There, in grainy black and white, was Karen, sneaking through my backyard at 2 a.m., a can of spray paint in her hand. She'd scrawled "dog lover" across my shed, the words dripping with malice. It was petty, but it was evidence. I called Officer Daniels, who arrived within the hour. He watched the footage, his jaw tight. "This is harassment," he said, shaking his head. "She's digging her own grave." By morning, Karen was back in custody, this time for vandalism and stalking. The neighborhood was in an uproar. Some cheered, others whispered about poor Karen being unfairly targeted. I didn't care about their opinions. I cared about Scout, about justice, about ending this nightmare. The court date loomed, and Sarah prepared me for the worst. "Karen's lawyer will try to paint you as the aggressor," she warned. "They'll say Scout was a threat, that you provoked her." I nodded, my stomach churning. The thought of facing Karen in court, her smug face staring me down, made my skin crawl. But I wasn't alone. Neighbors like Patel and the Garcias had agreed to testify, their courage bolstering mine. Even Mrs. Larson, frail but fierce, promised to take the stand. The night before the hearing, I sat with Scout, his head in my lap. "We're gonna get through this," I whispered, more to myself than to him. He licked my hand, his warmth a reminder of why I was fighting. Karen had tried to break us, but she'd only made us stronger. As I drifted to sleep, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Drop the case, or you'll regret it." I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Sarah and Daniels. Karen was unraveling, and I was ready to see her fall. The courtroom was cold, the kind of sterile chill that seeped into your bones. I sat in my wheelchair near the front, Scout lying quietly at my feet, his service vest a bright spot in the sea of gray suits. Karen sat across the aisle, her face a mask of defiance, but her hands fidgeted in her lap. Her lawyer, a slick man with a permanent smirk, leaned in to whisper something, and she nodded sharply. Sarah squeezed my hand, her presence steadying me. "We've got this," she whispered. I hope she was right. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called the case. Sarah presented our evidence first. The vet report confirming Scout's exposure to bleach, Mrs. Larson's recording, the backyard camera footage. Each piece was a brick in the wall we were building against Karen. When Patel testified about her bribery attempt, the courtroom buzzed. Karen's lawyer objected, calling it hearsay, but the judge overruled him. I could see Karen's composure cracking, her eyes darting to the exit. Then it was my turn. Wheeling to the stand, I felt every eye on me. Scout followed, lying down beside me, his calm presence anchoring me. I told the story, Karen's months of harassment, the bleach incident, the note, the vandalism. My voice shook at times, but I didn't stop. "Scout isn't just a dog," I said, looking directly at Karen. "He's my independence, my safety." She tried to take that away. The courtroom was silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Karen's lawyer tried to twist the narrative, claiming Scout had menaced her cats, that I'd exaggerated the incident to smear her. But his arguments fell flat. The judge's expression remained unreadable, but I saw her glance at Scout, her eyes softening. When Karen took the stand, she played the victim, her voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. "I was just protecting my neighborhood," she said, tears welling. "That dog was a threat. It was a performance, but it wasn't convincing." The prosecution called Mrs. Larson next. She walked slowly to the stand, her hands trembling but her voice clear. "Karen's been terrorizing this neighborhood for years," she said. "She threatened me, fined me, made me afraid to speak up. But I'm not afraid anymore." Her words hit like a thunderclap, and I saw neighbors in the gallery nod, their fear giving way to resolve. The final blow came when Daniels presented the text messages, traced back to a burner phone in Karen's possession. She'd been caught, her threats exposed. Her lawyer's objections grew frantic, but the judge silenced him. When the verdict came, it was swift, guilty of tampering with a service animal, a federal misdemeanor, plus charges of harassment and vandalism. Karen was sentenced to 6 months in jail and a hefty fine. As the gavel fell, she collapsed into her chair, her face pale, her empire in ruins. I wheeled out of the courtroom, Scout trotting beside me, the weight of the past months lifting. Neighbors clapped me on the shoulder, their smiles genuine. Karen's reign was over, and Maple Grove felt like it could breathe again. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. Karen's house went up for sale, her pristine lawn now overgrown, a silent testament to her fall. The HOA board dissolved, replaced by a new group led by Mr. Patel, who promised fairness and transparency. Neighbors started talking again, sharing stories over coffee instead of hiding behind closed doors. Maple Grove was healing, and so was I. Scout was back to his old self, his tail wagging as we took our daily walks. The vet had given him a clean bill of health, but I still checked his fur obsessively, haunted by the memory of that bleach-soaked evening. Sarah became a regular visitor, helping me navigate the civil suit we'd filed against Karen for emotional distress. "You're stronger than you know," she told me one night, over pizza and laughter. I wasn't so sure, but with Scout by my side, I felt like I could face anything. The neighborhood organized a fundraiser for the local animal shelter, a nod to Scout's role in our victory. At the event, Mrs. Larson pulled me aside, her eyes bright. "You did more than save Scout," she said. "You gave us our courage back." I blushed, unsure how to respond. I hadn't set out to be a hero, just a woman protecting her dog. But maybe that was enough. One evening, as I sat on my porch with Scout, a young girl from down the street approached, clutching a drawing. It was a crayon sketch of Scout, his golden fur glowing under a rainbow. "He's a superhero," she said shyly. I smiled, tucking the drawing into my pocket. Maybe she was right. Scout had been my hero long before Karen's spray bottle, and now he was the neighborhood's too. But the scars remained. I still jumped at loud noises, still checked my cameras every night. Karen was gone, but her threats lingered in my mind. I started therapy, something I'd resisted after the accident. Talking about the fear, the anger, the helplessness, it helped. Scout was there for every session, his steady presence a reminder that I wasn't alone. The civil suit moved forward, and though Karen's lawyer fought hard, we won a settlement. I used the money to start a small fund for service dog training, hoping to help others like me. It wasn't about the money. It was about turning pain into purpose. As winter settled over Maple Grove, I felt a shift inside me. I wasn't just the woman in the wheelchair anymore. I was Ellie, the one who stood up to Karen, the one who fought for what was right. Spring brought new life to Maple Grove. The trees bloomed pink and white, and neighbors waved as I wheeled past with Scout. The fundraiser had grown into a community tradition, with kids selling lemonade to raise money for the shelter. Mr. Patel's HOA was a breath of fresh air. No more petty fines, no more fear. People started planting wildflowers, painting their mailboxes bright colors. The neighborhood felt like home again. One morning, I got a call from Sarah. "You need to see this," she said, her voice tinged with excitement. She sent me a link to a news article. Former HOA president's apology goes viral. Against my better judgment, I clicked. It was Karen, standing outside the jail after her release, her face softer, her eyes tired. "I made mistakes," she said to the camera. "I let power go to my head. I'm sorry, especially to Ellie and Scout." I didn't know if I believed her, but it didn't matter. Her apology wasn't for me. It was for her. I'd already moved on. I started volunteering at the animal shelter, training service dogs with Scout as my assistant. His calm demeanor made him a favorite among the trainees, and I found joy in watching them grow. One puppy, a scrappy black lab named Hope, reminded me of Scout's early days. I adopted her, giving Scout a little sister to boss around. The house felt fuller, brighter, with their playful barks echoing through the halls. At the shelter, I met others like me, people who relied on service dogs, who'd faced their own Karens. We shared stories, laughed, cried. I realized my fight hadn't just been for Scout or Maple Grove. It was for everyone who'd ever been underestimated, dismissed, or bullied. It was for the Mrs. Larsons, the Patels, the Garcias, who'd found their voices because I'd found mine. One evening, as I watched Scout and Hope chase each other in the backyard, I thought about how far we'd come. The accident had taken my legs, but it hadn't taken my fight. Karen had tried to break me, but she'd only made me stronger. I wasn't defined by my wheelchair or my trauma. I was defined by my choices, by the love I had for Scout, by the community we'd built. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I leaned down to scratch Scout's ears. "We did it, buddy," I whispered. He looked up at me, his eyes full of trust, and I knew we'd be okay. Maple Grove wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. And that was enough.